I give lecture demonstrations at colleges and universities in conjunction with professors who teach courses in world music. And so when they cover certain areas, Middle East, Central Asia, or Caucasus, they bring me in to give the students a first-hand live experience. So what I've done is I've developed a program which is specifically designed for first-time listeners, so they can appreciate, at first-time listening a little bit more than if I just played music and it's sort of like throwing someone in a pool and saying swim. But I have a feeling that you're not first-time listeners, or is there anyone here who's a first-time listener? Then I'm going to do my full program, and the rest of you will have to be patient about it. Actually, I did this once in Baku, because this was almost about a year and a half ago. I was in Baku, and I performed at the Art Garden, and someone said, we hear you're playing music for Americans. Do they understand our Mugam? And I said, well, when you say understand, of course, not to the extent that an Azerbaijani who listens to Mugam will understand it, because they don't have all that experience in putting all the time listening, and they don't have the exact same cultural context where they're listening from. So how do we introduce them to it? And I said to him, would you like me to show you what I do, and how I introduce this unusual music to first-time listeners? And he said, yes, and the audience was enthusiastic. It was several hundred Azerbaijanis, and I said, no problem. And so I had to, of course, translate my English automatic speeches into the Azerbaijani language, which I'm okay at, but I never went to school, so it was a little rough. So they would understand, what I was talking about. And what was interesting about it was that right in front of me was Matthew Bryza and his translator, right? So Matthew's translator, who spoke better English than I do, of course his Azeri was perfect, he was an Azerbaijani man, and as I would say the Azerbaijani words, he would instantly translate into English for Matthew, and I would hear the echo of my own thoughts in my own language as I'm speaking. It was the most unusual experience delivering it, and he explained it very, very well, actually. So now, is there anybody here whose English is not their first language? I think Azerbaycanca danışırsınız, but English yaxşı yoksa babat. Ona göre, I think I may have to translate. I may have to do double duty today. We'll see how it goes. All right. So basically, how do I do this? What I do is I break Mugam, which is rather sophisticated, complicated music, into its most basic, simplistic components, and deliver the experience of what it feels like to hear the most simplified version of it, and then we build up the layers so that when the complexity appears, you can feel the connectedness between the complex structure of it and the simple roots that it grows from. So normally, what I do is actually take advantage of a piano. Because I said, we're usually in music schools, because the piano has no ethnic associations with it. As this is a tar, this is an Azerbaijani instrument. So what I'm going to do is, for the introduction of how Mugam actually works as a musical form, I'm going to use this instrument, but I'm going to play simple, recognizable scales to introduce to you the basics of how Azerbaijani Mugam works. And there's actually there's several principles. The first principle, of course, is that Azerbaijani music doesn't have chords in it. Now, every once in a while, a musician might toss in a chord for just a split second because it's fun to do. But basically, the music is all about melodies, and we call this kind of music monophonic, as opposed to polyphonic or harmony music, which is melodies based on chords. And so what that means is that because it's monophonic music, we can play notes which are not on the piano. We can play notes between the notes. And if anyone's familiar with the piano, we know that it has 12 keys between every octave. And like all music in the world, Azerbaijani Mugam is also framed by the octave. So the question we might ask is, if you're playing notes that are not on the piano, doesn't that mean those notes are out of tune? And the answer is yes. If you're playing chords, those notes will sound dissonant, disturbingly dissonant. It'll sound out of tune. But when you're playing monophonic music, you can play those notes and it won't sound out of tune so long as you can convince the listener you really meant to play that note. And of course it's very easy to do that. You play it once, it sounds strange. The second time you say, oh, he's played that same odd note again. And then you play it again and again, and by the time they realize this is the intended note. And that's when it starts to have its effect. In order for me to explain the effect of a microtone, I have to explain something about music in general. And here we go. Everyone has probably heard the major scale. Right? Nothing can be simpler than the major scale. And now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to point out to everyone here something that maybe they notice, maybe not, but because it's so common, we basically don't take much note of it. It's like gravity. It's always there, but we don't really feel the weight of our bodies as we walk around. That would be quite annoying. So I'm going to attract your attention to the specific effect that music has when you play notes in a certain sequence. And what I like to characterize that effect is the sense of transport. That we start here, home, and then we feel like we've been taken someplace. Now, obviously we haven't gone anywhere. I'm still sitting in this chair, and it looks to me like you're still sitting in yours. So how do we account for this mystical sense of transport? And of course my answer is we don't account for it. We just enjoy it. We marvel at it. It's a mystery. And I don't think there is an answer to a mystery like this. Music can actually have the power to make us feel transported. And we come home again. So while I'm playing the Mugams, try to bear in mind this experience you just had, which is the sensation of feeling as if the music you're listening to is transported. Only music that is monophonic and is melodies composed of staircase construction melodies will create the mystical sense of transport. The moment you start to skip around to different notes, like is done in for example, Western musical traditions, you may come up with some intriguing and wonderful and what's the right word? Enjoyable melodies, catchy tunes, all kinds of experiences. But the mystical sense of transport can only be produced by staircase construction monophonic melodies. And that's what Mugam is based on. And of course, if we had more time, I would get more deeply into the miracle of the octave, because this is an absolute mystery also, which is, here's a note, and here's a note, and they sound similar, but of course you hear the difference. But how is it possible for a note to be the same and different? This is another one of the mysteries that Eastern music in general, and Mugam also, is based on. The mystery of the octave, the mysterious sense of transport, and now I'm going to introduce one more effect, which is the delayed note. What are we experiencing? You want to hear, right? And upon hearing that, we have a very specific experience. We feel satisfied at the resolution or closure. So, and if I let that go even longer, probably you would have the reaction I'm used to getting from the students, which is annoyance. And for fun, I sometimes will do that on the piano and then get up and walk away and get back and play that note. We want to hear this. What is the power of music to make us wish to hear a note? This is another huge mystery. The octave is a mystery. The power for staircase construction melodies to give us a mystical sense of transport is a mystery. And the delaying of the last note in a sequence of notes makes us crave to hear that last note. This is a mystery. And this is what Mugam is based on. Okay, these three principles. Now, of course, we can't just delay a note and